Welcome to today's devotional message. You prayed, you fasted, you waited, and still, silence. Maybe this message is the sign you didn't know you needed. If these words meet you right where you are, like, share, and subscribe. It helps us reach more souls who need God's comfort. Comment below with your favorite Bible promise, or the one you're still holding on to in the waiting. Let's begin. And let His Word breathe new life into yours. You sit by the window. The clock on the wall ticks louder than usual, each second a tiny hammer blow against the quiet. This isn't just the absence of sound, it's the heavy quiet of God, or so it feels in this moment. You've sent the prayers out, whispered the hopes into the seemingly empty air, and yet the answer hasn't arrived. The email hasn't landed. The door hasn't opened, the change hasn't come. It feels like you're in a holding pattern, circling an invisible airport, watching others land while you remain suspended, consuming precious fuel of hope with each unanswered day. Perhaps your waiting room looks like a job search that yields only rejections, the wilderness wandering after a painful loss, a relationship stuck in uncertainty. A diagnosis without a cure that feels like a mountain you cannot climb, a dream deferred indefinitely, or simply the ache for something, anything, to shift, like waiting for a river to part when all you see is endless water. You replay past mistakes, wondering if you missed a sign, took a wrong turn, or simply aren't enough to warrant divine intervention. The enemy loves to whisper lies in the silence of waiting, filling the void with accusations and doubt. He says, God has forgotten you. Your faith is a broken oil lamp. You are invisible here. You've wrestled with the whys, the how longs, and the quiet, terrifying question, does God still see me here, forgotten in the waiting? It feels like being a mustard seed planted in the deepest, darkest soil, with no sign of sprout, no hint of sun, just dirt and silence. But what if this pause, this quiet, this period of delay isn't punishment or oversight? What if it's profound purpose? What if God is not just aware of your waiting, but intimately involved in it? What if the deepest work is happening in the hiddenness, like roots drawing life from unseen water? What if the strength you need is being forged not in the arrival, but in the remaining? This silence can be a storm, yes, but storms purify the air. It can feel like a valley, but valleys often lead to still waters. This message is for the weary soul in the silent room, for the heart that still whispers, I believe, even when the world feels stalled. This is about finding God's presence, not just at the destination, but powerfully, purposefully, breathtakingly in the waiting. It's about understanding that sometimes God's answer is not a loud affirmation, but a gentle, persistent presence in the silence. He is not absent. He is refining. He is not delaying out of indifference. He is working in ways unseen. The promise isn't just for the mountaintop, it's for the valley of delay too. The true miracle may be the grace that sustains you while you wait, the quiet strength that rises when the answer doesn't. What if the nothing happening is precisely where God is doing His most crucial work in you? The greatest growth often occurs in the unseen soil. Trust the process. Trust the gardener. He sees you, weary heart, right here in the quiet room. He has not forgotten the seed. You hold the promise like a fragile, sacred stone. It feels weighty, real, etched into your soul by what felt undeniably like the hand of God. Maybe it arrived as a verse that leaped off the page, vibrant and personal, or perhaps a prophetic word spoken over you, echoing in the quiet places of your spirit. It was a deep, unwavering conviction, a whisper that became a shout in your heart. You believed. You knew. It felt so near, so certain, just around the bend. But now the bend stretches into a long, featureless road. Months have bled into years. The certainty has faded to a faint hum beneath the clamor of daily life. The promise, once so tangible, feels like a mirage in a desert, something you see on the horizon, shimmering with possibility, yet utterly unreachable. You trace the steps you've taken, the fervent prayers offered on weary knees, the doors you knocked on only to find them sealed shut, the hopeful leaps of faith that landed with a quiet thud. You pore over the journey, searching for the disconnect, the point where the divine assurance veered away from your earthly reality. How could something so clearly promised feel so agonizingly far off? It is in this wide, echoing space that the insidious whispers begin. Doubt, like a slow-spreading vine, starts to wrap itself around the promise itself. Was that really God? It hisses. Maybe you just made it up. Maybe it was your own wishful thinking, dressed up as divine inspiration. And then, the more painful, more dangerous question, has he changed his mind? These questions aren't just intellectual puzzles. They are barbs that gnaw at the edges of your faith, turning once bright expectation into a dull ache of anxiety. The waiting feels less like preparation and more like punishment. This is the ancient spiritual terrain walked by Abraham and Sarah. God gave them a staggering promise, a son, an heir, nations flowing from their lineage, when their bodies were already as good as dead to childbearing. Genesis 15. They held that promise. They believed God, and it was credited to them as righteousness. Yet, decades unfolded. Years turned into a lifetime of waiting. And yes, they tried to help God along. The story of Ishmael is a poignant, painful testament to human impatience and doubt. Their waiting wasn't some passive, serene sitting. It was filled with human attempts, with natural hope slowly eroding, with the quiet sorrow of barrenness persisting year after year. Yet, God didn't rebuke their humanity, their questions, or even their flawed attempts to shortcut the process. He met them where they were, reaffirmed his covenant, and pointed them to the stars, a visual, impossible aid for an impossible promise. Genesis 15:5. He reminded them that his word was fixed, even if their circumstances were not. The profound, often painful insight here is that God's timeline is not measured by our ticking clocks or urgent deadlines. His methods often defy human logic, bypassing the obvious paths we might take. He permits this gap, this seemingly unproductive waiting period between the promise and its fulfillment, not to frustrate us, but to build something crucial within us. He is more concerned with cultivating our character and our trust than simply delivering on a schedule. The waiting isn't empty. It is a hidden season where faith is tested, purified, and deepened. The paradox is that sometimes God answers your prayer for acceleration by inviting you into the slowness required for true transformation. Pause in this space now. Where do you feel the widest gap between God's clear promise to you and your current, undeniable reality? Is it in your health, your finances, a relationship, your calling, or a deep longing of your heart? Take a quiet moment to sit with that tension. Then, speak to God about it, honestly, vulnerably. Ask Him to show you His perspective on the delay. Ask Him what He is building in the gap, remember Psalm 105:8. He remembers his covenant forever, the promise he made, for 1,000 generations. His faithfulness is an unchanging anchor, independent of your current circumstances or how far off the promise might feel today. His word does not return void. It is working even when you cannot see the work. You look around and nothing seems to be changing. The mountain before you looms just as high, the obstacle just as immovable, the longed-for situation just as distant as it was yesterday, last week, last year. It feels like stagnation, like being stuck in neutral while the rest of the world accelerates past. This is where weariness truly begins to sink its claws in, isn't it? Because we are inherently wired to see progress, to measure steps forward, to have tangible evidence that our efforts, and yes, God's promised intervention, are yielding results. When the visible landscape remains stubbornly, frustratingly the same, the spirit can flag. It whispers corrosive doubts. It's not working. Nothing is happening. Maybe God isn't hearing. Maybe He isn't moving. Think of a seed planted deep in the ground. You place it in the darkness, cover it with earth, and for a long, long time, nothing appears above the soil. To any observer looking at the surface, it seems utterly dormant, perhaps even dead. There is no green sprout, no hint of life pushing upwards. But beneath that quiet surface, in the unseen hidden earth, a profound miracle is unfolding. Roots are pushing down, anchoring the future plant, delving into the darkness to gather nutrients, establishing the vital foundation for everything that will eventually break through into the light. This silent, hidden work is often precisely what God is doing in the waiting seasons of your life. While you desperately search for the sprout and see none, He is building roots within you. He is strengthening your foundation, cultivating a deeper patience than you thought possible, forging resilience in the quiet fire of unanswered prayer, developing a dependence on Him alone, not on the visible outcomes you crave. He is working intensely in the unseen places of your soul and circumstances, shaping character and preparing the ground for future growth. Perhaps the most powerful growth happens when you see least. It is in the dark soil of waiting that true endurance takes root. It is when you feel most stagnant that God might be expanding your capacity for faith. Reflect for a moment. What spiritual roots might God be nurturing and growing in you during this hidden season where surface change is invisible? What quiet strength, what deeper trust, what unwavering hope is He trying to anchor within your spirit? Trust that even when you see no surface change, even when the visible remains stubbornly the same, God is actively, purposefully working beneath the soil of your life. He sees what is hidden, and He is preparing something for the light. Isaiah 45:3. The silence stretches, a vast echoing canyon where your prayers seem to vanish without a trace. You sit there, the stillness pressing in, and in that quiet space, doubt begins its slow, insidious work. It doesn't announce itself with thunder. It creeps in like a cold draft under a closed door, a chilling whisper that snakes through your heart and mind. Is God good? It murmurs, light as a feather, heavy as stone. Does He really care about this? The question lodges itself, sticky and persistent. Is He even real, or is this just elaborate self-deception? Doubt is a skilled architect of despair, building its case on the ruins of past disappointments. Every unanswered prayer you remember, every door that remained closed, every unexpected loss, It gathers them like evidence, presenting them as proof against God's character, against His faithfulness. It preys on your vulnerability, especially when you feel weakest, turning your history into a courtroom where God is on trial and your weary heart is the jury. You find yourself questioning everything. The moments you felt God's presence, the clear leading you thought you heard, the very foundation of your faith journey feels shaky beneath your feet. It feels easier sometimes to just give in to the pervasive cynicism that the world offers, to lower your expectations to the ground, to build walls around your heart, hoping to protect it from the imagined pain of hoping in vain again. Maybe you have already confessed this gnawing doubt to God, the words feeling heavy on your tongue, a confession born of guilt and shame, wondering if this struggle, this wrestling with unbelief, is disqualifying you from receiving anything good, anything promised. You believe, yes, but oh, the weight of the but what if. Yet, walk with Jesus for a moment. He encountered many who wrestled in this valley of uncertainty, including those closest to him. Think of Thomas, who needed to touch the wounds, to place his finger in the nail marks. John 20:24-29. Jesus didn't condemn his need for tangible proof. He gently invited him into belief, meeting him right in the space of his doubt. Remember the father of the demon-possessed boy, his heart breaking, his voice raw with desperation and honesty, crying out the paradox of faith. I believe, help my unbelief. Mark 9:24. Jesus didn't turn away from the messiness of that plea. He stepped into it and brought healing, addressing both the boy's need and the father's fragile faith. This is the powerful, liberating insight. Acknowledging your doubt to God is rarely a sin. In fact, it is often the courageous first step towards a deeper, more resilient faith. God doesn't need you to hide your questions, your fears, your wrestling. He can handle the full, complex, messy reality of your heart. He isn't looking for perfect faith. He is looking for honest faith. Bring your doubt, your unbelief, your trembling questions to Him. He meets you there, not with judgment, but with an invitation to trust just a little more, even in the darkness. Reflect on this. What specific doubts are amplified in the quiet of your waiting, in the silence where you long for a sign? Is it a doubt about God's power, His love, His timing, His very existence? Don't shove them down. Bring those honest, uncomfortable doubts to God today. Speak them aloud or write them down, just as they are. Ask Him, just like that desperate father, to help your unbelief. For without faith, it is impossible to please God. Hebrews 11:6. Not because He demands blind obedience, but because faith is the bridge across which His promises travel into your life. He wants you to trust the bridge builder, even when you can't see the other side. The silence stretches thin, weighted down by unspoken questions. You've done all you know to do, prayed, planned, pushed. But the answer, or perhaps the outcome you desperately crave, remains just beyond the horizon. And in this waiting, something primal rises, the deep, unsettling need for control. It feels like the air is being squeezed out, and your instinct is to grasp, to force, to bend reality to your will, to your timeline. You strategize until your mind aches, manipulate scenarios in your head, trying to engineer the breakthrough, the healing, the provision now. It's a frantic dance against the quiet stillness God often requires. This relentless striving, this constant effort to make things happen, we often mistake it for faith, I'm not just sitting here, we tell ourselves. But look closer. Are those efforts born of peaceful trust? Or are they fueled by the gnawing fear that if you don't control every variable, everything will fall apart? Often, it's anxiety wearing the convincing mask of diligence, a refusal, perhaps subconscious, to lay down your intricately built plans and your fierce need to orchestrate the symphony of your life. It's the feeling of holding on to the steering wheel so tightly, your knuckles white with strain, convinced you must navigate this treacherous path alone, on your own terms, even though you know, deep down, only God sees the true way ahead. You are trying to plot a course through mist that only clears at His command. Think of Mary and Martha, their hearts raw with grief, watching their beloved brother Lazarus fade. When Jesus finally arrived, Martha, ever the pragmatist, ran to meet Him. Her words held faith. Yes, Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. John 11:21. But within that declaration of belief in His power was also the echo of pain, the quiet ache of frustration with His timing. She knew He could have prevented it, but she struggled profoundly with the reality He hadn't, at least not on her schedule, in the way she expected. She understood His power, but wrestled with His control over the moment. This is where the battle for surrender is fought. Surrender isn't the white flag of defeat, passively giving up on the hope or the prayer. It is the powerful, active choice to trust God's infinite wisdom and supreme control more than your own finite ability to manage circumstance. It is the courageous act of releasing that white-knuckle grip on the steering wheel and choosing to believe, with every fiber of your being, that His hands are not just capable, but sovereign, perfectly skilled, and ultimately loving. The profound, gentle paradox is this: you find your greatest strength not in holding on, but in letting go of the how and the when. True surrender is giving God the permission slip to write the story in His way, in His perfect time. In this current season of waiting you find yourself in, what area are you clinging to most fiercely? Where are you fighting against the flow, trying to control an outcome only God can provide? It might be a relationship, a job, a financial crisis, a dream deferred, a healing longed for. Take a quiet moment now. Identify that one area where your grip is tightest, and then practice releasing it to Him. It may not feel like one grand gesture, but a series of small, courageous acts. Release it one breath at a time as you inhale peace and exhale fear. Release it one thought at a time as you replace worry with His promises. Release it one action at a time, choosing to trust His direction over your own frantic maneuvering. For it is when you trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding that He promises to make your paths straight. Proverbs 3:5-6. He's not asking for your flawless execution. He's simply asking for your willingness to surrender the blueprints to the master architect. You stand at the edge of another unanswered prayer, another timeline missed. The calendar pages blur, marked not by progress, but by the steady, grinding rhythm of waiting. It's not just the delay that wears on you, it's the how of the waiting, the internal friction of a soul longing for speed while life demands stillness. Learning patience feels less like acquiring a gentle virtue and more like being slowly sanded down, rough edges exposed, imperfections smoothed through uncomfortable friction. It forces a surrender of your own urgent clock, asking you to trust in a process you cannot map or measure. This desert you find yourself in, whether it's a season of professional stagnation, relational strain, a health struggle, or just the slow unfolding of God's plan, feels vast and empty, a place where you might retrace familiar anxieties, face the same internal obstacles, and wonder if the promised land will ever actually appear on the horizon. You remember the stories, the great wilderness journeys, and how they were never just about covering ground. The Israelites, freed from Egypt, faced a journey that should have been weeks, maybe months. It became 40 years. This wasn't a detour caused by God losing his way. It was a consequence of their fear, their doubt, their fundamental impatience with his timing and methods. They demanded immediate gratification, tangible proof, visible progress, and in doing so, they extended their season of discomfort. Yet, that prolonged wandering in the desert became the crucible where God taught them dependency. He fed them daily manna, water from rocks, showed them his presence in cloud and fire. Deuteronomy chapter 8 recounts how he humbled them, tested them, and taught them that man does not live by bread alone, but by every word that comes from the mouth of the Lord. Their impatience cost them speed, yes, but the delay forged a generation refined by absolute reliance on a faithful God. This season of waiting, this personal desert, is not a punishment. It is a training ground. It's God's classroom where the quiet strength you long for is being forged, not by avoiding the delay, but by enduring it with trust. Patience isn't about passive resignation. It's an active posture of faith that says, I will not rush ahead of God, nor will I collapse in despair while I wait. Hebrews chapter 10 verse 36 reminds us that we need endurance so that when you have done the will of God, you may receive what is promised. The waiting is doing His will too. It strips away the illusion of control, the need for instant answers, the reliance on your own hustle, revealing the deeper need for God Himself. This friction you feel, this sandpapering, is removing the parts of you that resist His pace, shaping you into someone who can embrace His rhythm. Consider this. Where in your life is God inviting you to practice patience today? Is it in a relationship, a career step, a personal goal? Choose just one small area right now to release your grip on the timeline, to let go of the need for speed, and consciously choose to embrace His slower, more perfect rhythm, trusting that the quiet endurance is building something profound within you. As Psalm 27:14 whispers, wait for the Lord, be strong, and let your heart take courage. Wait for the Lord. Your strength is found in the waiting, not in escaping it. She scrolls through the endless feed, a knot tightening low in her stomach. Another engagement photo. Another glowing pregnancy announcement. Another career leap celebrated with emojis and exclamation points. She sees the highlight reels, lives accelerating, dreams visibly unfolding, milestones met by certain ages that feel like arbitrary yet crushing deadlines. And she looks at her own life, perhaps paused, perhaps navigating a quiet wilderness, perhaps simply not matching the pace she sees others running. Why them? Why not me? The question echoes, not in judgment of others, but in a deep, aching insecurity about herself. This feeling of being left behind, of watching from the sidelines, is the comparison trap, a deep, dark well of discontent that promises only thirst. It's almost impossible not to look around when you're waiting. Friends getting married, careers taking off, healing arriving, dreams coming true. Social media amplifies the highlight reels of others, making your own paused or struggling reality feel even more stark and insufficient. Why them and not me? The comparison trap is a deep well of discontent. It convinces you that God is playing favorites, that you've been overlooked, or that your value is somehow tied to achieving certain milestones by a certain age or time. This thinking pulls your eyes off God and onto external benchmarks, fueling anxiety and resentment. Your heart starts whispering doubts. Maybe I'm not faithful enough. Maybe I prayed the wrong way. Maybe I don't deserve it. The Apostle Paul, with spiritual wisdom, warns against measuring ourselves by one another, calling it foolishness. Your path isn't a race on a shared track. It's a sacred, unique journey designed specifically for you by a God who knows the intricate details of your life, your calling, and the precise timing needed for your growth. He isn't playing favorites. He's crafting individual masterpieces. He isn't overlooking you. He is overseeing the unique unfolding of your story. Think of the biblical figures whose timelines defied conventional expectation. Abraham waited 25 long years for the son of promise, Isaac. Moses waited 40 solitary years, learning the wilderness, before he stood before the burning bush and heard his divine commission. Joseph waited over a decade, enduring betrayal, slavery, and prison, before stepping into the destiny revealed in his youthful dreams. Their waits were vastly different, their paths seemingly circuitous, yet God was utterly faithful to each, bringing his promise to fruition in his perfect time, in their unique context. The profound insight here is simple, yet transformative. Comparison is a thief. It steals your joy, robs you of gratitude for your current season, and erodes your trust in God's personal plan for you. Your worth is not defined by external progress, by the milestones others celebrate, or by hitting certain benchmarks by a certain time. Your worth, beloved, is defined solely and eternally by God's relentless love for you. Your journey is not less significant because it looks different. It is uniquely precious because it is yours, given by the Creator who knows the end from the beginning. What looks like being left behind can actually be God positioning you uniquely ahead, preparing you in ways visible success cannot. Sometimes the greatest progress isn't seen. It's the quiet strengthening happening within you in the unseen season. When you feel the sting of comparison rising, when the why them and not me whisper tries to pull your eyes off God, consciously, intentionally redirect your focus. Lift your gaze back to the one who holds your future. Reflect on the promises God has spoken over your life, over your potential, over your future. Trust that He is writing a beautiful, unique story with your days, even when the chapter you're in feels slow or unseen. Your journey is His, and it is perfect in His eyes. The clock on the wall ticks a slow, relentless rhythm, measuring minutes that feel like hours, days like years. You pace the worn carpet of the waiting room, soul heavy with the silence. Nothing moves externally. The phone remains quiet. The door stays shut. The circumstance you've prayed over relentlessly remains stubbornly unchanged. You feel stuck, forgotten, in a pause that stretches on and on, wondering if your pleas even made it past the ceiling. But God is not idle in the stillness. Waiting is not empty time in His economy. It is often his most profound workshop. While you feel like you're standing still, God is doing his deepest, most crucial work within you. Like a master sculptor hidden behind a curtain, his hands are busy shaping the clay of your soul. He is chiseling away at the rough edges of impatience, molding resilience where frustration once resided. This unseen labor is where character is forged, where roots grow deep in the dark soil of faith, hidden from casual view. This internal work, however, is rarely comfortable. It is not a gentle massage, but often a refining fire. He is exposing hidden idols you didn't even know you worshipped. Comfort, control, self-reliance. He's refining your motives, separating the pure gold of genuine faith from the dross of performance or seeking approval. This process is purification, and purification involves heat, pressure, discomfort. You might find yourself confronting fears, insecurities, or unhealthy patterns you thought were long gone, brought to the surface by the very pressure of the waiting. This isn't punishment. This uncomfortable stripping away is part of God's loving process to make you more like Christ. He is preparing you, not just for the blessing you're waiting for, but for the person you need to be to steward it well, a vessel strong, pure, and ready. The psalmist understood this sacred, often painful, internal alchemy. Before I was afflicted, I went astray, they confess, but now I obey your word. Psalm 119:67. The affliction, the difficulty, the waiting, it was the catalyst for correction, for a deeper, truer obedience that wasn't just external, but flowed from a transformed heart. James echoes this divine principle, speaking of trials producing steadfastness, leading to completeness, lacking nothing. James 1:2-4. The profound insight is this: the waiting room is not a barren wasteland, but often a sacred space. It is the wilderness where God builds resilience, deepens faith beyond circumstantial evidence, and prepares you for what's next. Even if you cannot see the blueprints yet, he turns the delay into development. He uses the silence to strengthen your inner ear for his voice. Take a quiet moment now. Ask God, gently, what are you building in me during this waiting season? Be open to the honest answer, trusting that the hands doing the molding are hands of perfect love, working for your ultimate good and his glory. Romans 5:3-5. The calendar pages turn, each one a quiet sigh echoing the long wait. The present moment feels uncertain, a mist clinging to the edges of your vision, making it impossible to see what lies ahead. It's in these moments, when the future seems shrouded in doubt and the waiting presses in like a heavy cloak, that despair tries to settle. Your world shrinks to the immediate discomfort, the need unmet, the prayer unanswered, the lack that stares back from the mirror. It's easy to believe this is all there is, that the silence means absence, that the delay means denial. But remembering is an act of radical faith. It is a deliberate turning of your heart, a casting of your mind back through the years, through the seasons, to revisit the undeniable moments when God did come through. Think of the times he provided when the cupboard was bare. Remember the unexpected phone call, the door that swung open just when you thought you were trapped, the whispered word of comfort that arrived precisely when your soul felt most alone. Recall the physical healing, the emotional deliverance, the intricate guidance that, looking back, you know could only have come from his hand. Your history with God is not merely a collection of dates and events. It is a living testament to his unwavering faithfulness, but gallery of miracles, both grand and intimately small, that prove he is who he says he is, true to his every word. When the Israelites stood paralyzed by fear at the edge of the Red Sea, Pharaoh's army thundering behind them, it was Moses who didn't just command them to stand still, but reminded them of the God who had already brought them out of Egypt. Exodus 14. Their memory of past deliverance fueled their faith for the impossible path ahead. Later, safe on the other side, they didn't just move on. They sang songs of remembrance, embedding his power deep into their collective memory. When facing the giants that loomed in the Promised Land, when the odds seemed overwhelming, Caleb's courageous faith was anchored in the past. The Lord is with us, Numbers 14:9, recalling the victories God had already secured on their journey. The psalmist, drowning in distress, didn't just cry out. He intentionally recalled God's deeds, his wonders of old, pulling hope from the well of his own history with the divine. Psalm 77:10-11. The profound insight is this: remembering God's faithfulness in your past doesn't just comfort your soul, it actively fuels your faith for the present uncertainty and future unknowns. It's a powerful anchor in the storm of waiting. Your life, right now, is already a remarkable story of God's persistent grace at work, often in ways you didn't fully recognize until much later. Sometimes, the strength to move forward isn't found in seeing the next step, but in seeing the countless steps He's already walked with you. Perhaps clarity isn't about knowing the future, but about seeing His fingerprints all over your past. Take a moment now, in the quiet. Breathe deep. What are 5 specific ways God has been undeniably faithful to you? Maybe He shielded you from harm, provided a friend when you felt isolated, opened a financial door, gave you peace in a crisis, or simply carried you through a season you thought would break you. List them. Journal them. Let those tangible memories rise up like mountains of hope against the flat landscape of your current waiting. Lamentations 3:21-23. Let the remembrance of His past mercies strengthen your trust for the season you're navigating now. Your past is a promise for your future, written in the ink of His love. The dust settles on your hopes like fine sand, covering the vibrancy you felt just weeks ago. You sit in the quiet, a deep sigh escaping, the kind that carries the weight of unanswered questions and calendar pages that turn without the desired change arriving. Waiting can feel paralyzing, a relentless stillness imposed upon a soul that yearns to move, to build, to arrive at the destination you see so clearly in your mind, or perhaps the one you desperately hope for. It's easy to fall into the trap of putting life on hold, feeling as though the real living, the meaningful moments, can only begin once the longed-for outcome finally arrives. You tell yourself, when this happens, then I can. And so the now becomes merely a placeholder, a blank space to be endured. But God's truth whispers against that narrative. His call isn't to pause life until your circumstances align, but to live faithfully in the waiting, not just for the end of it. This season isn't meant to be a void, an empty room where dust collects and dreams gather cobwebs. No, this season is a space for profound growth, for quiet, unnoticed service, and for a deepening, unshakable connection with the one who holds time itself in His hands. It's a season where faith isn't just intellectual assent. It's a muscle built in the quiet repetition of trust when nothing seems to be changing. What does it look like to actively wait? It isn't about manufacturing frenetic energy or pretending not to feel the ache of delay. It means intentionally nurturing your relationship with God, seeking His face, not just for answers, but for His presence. It means looking around you, even in the midst of your own uncertainty, to see where you can serve others, pouring out what you have, however little it feels, into the lives around you. It means developing your gifts, the unique talents and passions God has woven into your being, whether they seem directly related to your waiting circumstance or not. It means being faithful in the small things, the daily duties, the simple acts of kindness, the consistent disciplines, because faithfulness isn't measured by the size of the stage, but by the posture of the heart towards the Master. And, perhaps most surprisingly, it means finding moments of genuine joy in the present, even amidst the lingering uncertainty, because joy is a fruit of the Spirit, not merely a reaction to perfect circumstances. It's about living your life with purpose now, finding meaning and value in the season you are in, not just waiting for purpose to arrive when circumstances change. Consider the disciples after Jesus ascended to heaven. They had been given a monumental promise: the Holy Spirit would come. They were instructed to wait in Jerusalem. They weren't told to go take a lengthy spiritual retreat and do nothing until further notice. Acts 1:12-26 tells us they gathered together consistently. They prayed, they fellowshipped, they recalled Jesus' teachings, and in obedience to a perceived necessity, they even took practical steps like choosing a replacement for Judas. They were actively preparing their hearts and their community, being obedient to the instructions Jesus had already given them while anticipating the next move of God. Think of Nehemiah. While waiting for the opportune moment and the king's permission to rebuild the broken-down walls of Jerusalem, a dream deeply impressed upon his heart. He didn't just sit idly wishing. He prayed with anguish and earnestness. He mourned. He assessed the situation from afar. He developed a plan, and when the moment came, he spoke with courage, born of prayer and preparation. Nehemiah 1-2. The profound insight here is that waiting on God doesn't mean doing nothing in the literal sense of inactivity. It means doing what God has already called you to do, loving Him with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength, loving your neighbor as yourself, being faithful stewards of the life, resources, and gifts He has entrusted to you, while releasing your grip on the outcome and the timing. It's the paradox of restless trust. Your heart may ache for the future, but your hands are busy in the present, doing the work God has placed before you. It's finding freedom in the very constraints of waiting. The wilderness can feel barren, but it's often where God leads you to hidden springs of strength you never knew you had. The waiting room might seem stagnant, but it's where the deepest roots of faith often grow, unseen beneath the surface. He isn't asking you to have all the answers or the power to force the door open. He's asking for your simple obedience in the space where you are. He's asking you to keep your lamp trimmed and burning, doing the quiet work of maintaining your faith and love, ready for when the call comes. Reflect. In this very moment, what is one single thing God is asking you to be faithful in today, right now, regardless of your waiting circumstance? Is it tending to a difficult relationship? Is it being diligent in your work, even if it feels pointless? Is it spending intentional time in His Word and prayer? Is it serving a specific need you see around you? Focus your energy there. Pour your heart into that one thing, doing it as unto the Lord. Colossians 3:23. Trusting that your faithfulness in the small, present task is part of His grand, future plan. The phone stays silent. The email inbox remains stubbornly empty. Each passing day stretches the tension tighter, like a string ready to snap. You know this feeling, don't you? This ache in the chest, this jittery energy that settles nowhere. It's the signature feeling of uncertainty, that gnawing sense of not knowing when or even if things will change. You're waiting, holding your breath, and in the vacuum of answers, anxiety rushes in to fill the space. Your mind becomes a relentless projector, flashing endless what-if scenarios across the screen of your thoughts. What if it doesn't work out? What if they say no? What if I lose everything? What if the worst-case scenario isn't just a possibility, but an inevitability? You replay conversations, analyze silent cues, search for hidden meanings, all in a desperate attempt to grasp control over a future that refuses to reveal itself. Restlessness becomes a constant companion, making it hard to sit still, hard to focus, hard to simply be. Your thoughts return, again and again, to the unknown horizon, pulling you further away from the present moment. This is not peace. This is the storm raging within, driven by a deep-seated fear born of vulnerability and a lack of clear vision. But Jesus spoke of a different kind of peace, didn't he? A peace profoundly unlike the world's fragile truce, easily shattered by circumstance. "Peace I leave with you," he told his disciples, knowing the storms they would face. "My peace I give to you, not as the world gives do I give to you. Let not your heart be troubled, neither let it be afraid." John 14:27. This peace he offers isn't the absence of the storm, but the miraculous ability to find calm within its fury. It's not a promise that uncertainty will vanish, but that his shalom, his wholeness, well-being, and rightness with God can settle over you in the midst of it. Think of the Apostle Paul, writing from the confines of a prison, shackled and uncertain of his earthly future. Yet he penned these luminous words, "Be anxious for nothing, but in everything by prayer and supplication, with thanksgiving, let your requests be made known to God, and the peace of God, which transcends all understanding, will guard your hearts and minds through Christ Jesus." Philippians 4:6-7. The peace of God doesn't fit neatly into our logical boxes. It doesn't make sense to the world. It's a peace that transcends understanding. How can you be peaceful when everything feels unstable? How can your heart be guarded when the future is a tangled wilderness? This peace isn't earned by figuring things out or controlling the outcome. It is received when you choose, deliberately and faithfully, to bring your raw anxieties, your unasked questions, your frantic what-ifs, directly to God in prayer. It is accessible not when the uncertainty is resolved, but when you anchor your hope, not in the shifting sands of circumstances, but in the unshakable bedrock of His character. He is the one who is certain, sovereign over every detail, every delay, every seemingly random turn. You don't need to see the whole map to take the next step. You just need to trust the cartographer. You don't need to predict the future. You need to place your hope in the one who holds the future in his hands. Consider this quiet truth. Perhaps the peace you seek isn't found by eliminating the uncertainty, but by learning to trust in it, knowing God is there. The less you cling to controlling the unpredictable tide, the more His steady hand can guide you through the waves. The questions may still linger, whispered by doubt, but his presence whispers louder, promising rest for the weary soul. What specific what if is currently a thief, stealing the tranquility from your heart and mind? What future scenario plays on repeat, stirring up fear? Name it. Acknowledge its power over you in this moment. Now, quietly, gently, lift that concern, that fear, that specific what if to God. Ask Him, right now, for His peace, that peace that surpasses logic, that peace promised to those whose minds are stayed on Him because they trust in Him. Isaiah 26:3. Let His peace stand guard at the door of your heart and mind, a sentry against the invading forces of anxiety. Choose to trust, not because the path ahead is clear, but because the one walking with you is. You sit in the silence, the clock on the wall ticking a rhythm that feels agonizingly slow, measuring out a time that isn't yours. You've planted the seed of faith, prayed over it, watered it with tears and hope, but the ground remains unbroken. Where is the sprout? Where is the fruit? In a world that delivers everything from groceries to answers with the click of a button, this divine delay feels like a cruel joke. We are wired for now, conditioned for immediate gratification, and we often expect God to fit within our 24/7 cycle. But He doesn't operate on internet speed. He works on an eternal timeline, a tapestry so vast and intricate that what looks like a tangled thread to you is a crucial part of His perfect design. This is perhaps the hardest pill to swallow in the waiting room of life. God's timing is profoundly different from yours. He sees the beginning from the end, knows every future sunrise and sunset, every intersection of lives and circumstances you can't even fathom. A delay in your eyes might be the precise moment required for preparation you desperately need but don't yet understand. It could be divine protection from a path that looks right but leads to a wilderness you weren't meant to enter unprepared. It could be the perfect alignment of countless moving parts that must fall into place for His promise to unfold with maximum glory. The Apostle Peter gives us a glimpse into this vast difference in perspective. With the Lord, one day is as 1,000 years, and 1,000 years as one day. 2 Peter 3:8. His view is not limited by the finite ticking of our clocks. Consider Jesus and Lazarus. Jesus waited 4 days. 4 days of grief, confusion, and perhaps even doubt among those who loved Lazarus. Why the wait? Not because He was slow or uncaring, but because His timing would bring God the most profound glory through a resurrection that left no room for human explanation. John 11:6, 11:39-44. The insight is simple yet staggering. God's timing is always perfect, even when it feels frustratingly slow to us. It is a paradox. The slowest possible outcome becomes the most perfect timing. Trusting this timing requires a deep, humbling surrender. It demands acknowledging that His wisdom far surpasses your own finite understanding, your anxious urgency, your carefully constructed timelines. It means releasing your white-knuckled grip on when you think things should happen. Can you genuinely whisper in the stillness, "God, I trust your timing, even when I don't understand it, even when it feels like a delay is a denial"? It is in this surrender of the when that you discover a deeper peace, a quiet confidence that the author of time knows exactly what He is doing. There is a time for everything under heaven, even for the waiting. Ecclesiastes 3:1. The waiting itself can be the sacred work. You sit in the silence, the weight of the weight pressing down. Another door hasn't opened. Another opportunity passed you by. It feels personal, doesn't it? As if God has simply forgotten this corner of the world, this quiet room where you plead for movement. The ache isn't just in the delay itself, but in the creeping fear that perhaps you weren't chosen after all, that your dreams were just fleeting fantasies whispered on the wind. You see others moving forward, their paths clearing, and the contrast sharpens the edges of your own stillness into a painful point. Doubt, like a persistent vine, seeks to wrap itself around the fragile shoots of your faith, whispering that your waiting is meaningless, a void where nothing is happening. But what if the stillness is not emptiness, but preparation? What if the closed door isn't a sign of rejection, but protection from something you cannot yet see, a hidden danger or a detour that would lead you astray? God's timing is rarely about merely saying yes or no to your immediate request. Often, His delay is intricately linked to what He is doing for you, or even for others whose paths must intersect with yours at a precise moment. The waiting is not passive. It is a dynamic period where God is aligning circumstances, moving people into place, gathering resources, orchestrating a symphony of events far grander and more complex than your single story. Your narrative is being woven into His immense tapestry, a design so vast and interconnected that your current pause is essential for the pattern to unfold correctly, for you and for the countless threads around you. Consider Joseph, gifted with dreams of leadership, yet plunged into the wilderness of slavery and the stone walls of a prison. Years became a decade, then two. His personal waiting seemed an endless, cruel postponement of God's promises. Yet that desolate period wasn't just about refining Joseph's character, though it certainly did that. It was crucial training and positioning. It prepared him not only for elevation in Egypt, but more profoundly, it placed him perfectly to preserve his entire family, the very lineage through which the Messiah would come during a devastating famine centuries later. His personal waiting served a massive redemptive purpose that reached far beyond his own life, impacting generations and fulfilling God's broader plan of salvation. Genesis 50:20. Your waiting, too, is not just about you. It is a critical piece in God's expansive, interconnected plan. Your stillness might be allowing another life to be touched, another heart to be prepared, another resource to be made ready for the moment when your door finally swings open. Perhaps the delay is fostering resilience in you that you will need to support others later. Perhaps it is creating a vacuum that draws someone else closer to God because of your quiet faith in the waiting. There is a profound freedom in knowing your apparent stagnation serves a divine purpose, that even when you feel stuck, you are actively participating in God's ongoing work in the world. Ask Him for a glimpse of His broader perspective. How might God's timing in your situation be connected to something larger than just your personal outcome? Surrendering your need for immediate understanding can be the very act that opens your eyes to the hidden hand of God, orchestrating possibilities you never imagined. Romans 8:28 offers a quiet comfort. All things work together for good, for those who love God and are called according to His purpose. Trust that the author knows the perfect page for your next chapter to begin. The days blend into weeks. The weeks into months, and you are still here, still waiting. Perhaps it's the quiet ache for a breakthrough, a healing that seems slow in coming, a new door that remains shut, a relationship prayerfully sought but not yet found. In this prolonged season, it's a natural, painful slide into believing your worth, your very identity, is somehow tied to the arrival of this longed-for thing. You glance around and see others receiving what you crave, and a subtle poison enters the soul. The lie that you are failing because your prayer hasn't been answered on your timeline, that you are less than because your life doesn't yet mirror the picture in your heart or the lives around you. You begin to wear the label, the one who is waiting, the one who is struggling, and the weight of this definition presses down, suffocating your spirit, whispering inadequacy into the quiet corners of your mind. Shame can curl its fingers around your hope, and the vibrant person you know yourself to be begins to shrink under the harsh light of unmet expectations. But let the truth settle like cool water on parched ground. Your identity in Christ stands utterly independent of your circumstances, your achievements, or the timing of God's answers. Before Abraham held the promised son, Isaac, in his arms, a weight that stretched for decades through uncertainty and doubt, God looked at Abraham's heart, saw his simple belief, and declared him righteous. Genesis 15, verse 6. His profound identity as a friend of God, James 2:23, wasn't bestowed upon him after the promise arrived, but was forged and recognized in the trust he placed in God while he was still waiting, still living the reality of the promise unfulfilled. Your worth isn't a prize you earn when the breakthrough finally comes. It is a gift secured by God's fierce, unconditional love and your position as His beloved child. John 1:12 whispers it. Ephesians 1:4-5 affirms it. You were chosen, adopted, accepted before the world began, before any waiting room existed. This isn't a status dependent on your performance or your patience. It is an irrevocable truth established by grace. The profound insight is this: your true, secure, radiant identity is not discovered in what you possess, what you accomplish, or what arrives in your season of waiting, but in whose you are. You belong to Him. You are a deeply loved child of the King, fully accepted, cherished, and whole, right here, right now, in the midst of the journey. You are not defined by the waiting, but by the one you wait on. Take a moment now. Feel the sting of the lie that says you are insufficient because of your current reality. Acknowledge it. Then, gently, deliberately counteract that lie. Find a quiet place and speak God's truth over yourself. Remember the words of Psalm 139:13-16. How fearfully and wonderfully you are made, known by God before you were even formed. You are not forgotten, not less than, not incomplete in the waiting. You are His. Let His truth be the loudest voice defining who you are today. This stillness, this speaking of truth, is not just reflection. It is active resistance against the lies that would steal your identity while God is faithfully writing your story. You tell yourself, I'll be happy when the waiting is over, when the prayer is answered, when the season finally shifts. You pin your potential for joy onto a future moment, a desired outcome, a changed circumstance. It feels like you're walking through a long, dark tunnel, eyes fixed solely on the pinprick of light at the far end. Every step forward feels like an act of endurance, a simple passage through something unpleasant to get to something good. In this mindset, the tunnel itself becomes a void, empty of grace, devoid of beauty, a place where joy is impossible because it hasn't yet arrived. But what if God isn't just waiting for you at the end of the tunnel? What if He is the light within the tunnel? What if joy isn't a prize awarded upon arrival, but a provision offered on the journey? You might be so focused on the destination that you miss the surprising moments of grace scattered along the path. The quiet comfort of a sudden peace, the unexpected kindness of a stranger, the simple beauty of a sunrise through the dust. God is profoundly, actively present with you, right here, right now, in the midst of your current reality, offering moments of connection, whispers of peace, and simple, profound pleasures if you only have eyes to see. Think of the Apostle Paul, writing letters filled with hope and even joy, often from a Roman prison. He wasn't in ideal circumstances. He knew hardship intimately. Yet he penned the powerful words, "I have learned in whatever situation I am to be content. I can do all things through Him who strengthens me." Philippians 4:11-13. This wasn't a denial of his chains or his suffering. It was a radical choice to find strength and perspective rooted not in the changing external, but in the unchanging internal presence of Christ. His contentment, his ability to find joy, wasn't conditional on being released from prison. It was a fruit cultivated in the prison. This reveals a profound spiritual insight. Joy isn't dependent on your circumstances aligning perfectly. It is a fruit of the Spirit, Galatians 5:22, a divine gift available to you as you lean into God's presence, regardless of what your waiting season looks or feels like. It's like finding a hidden spring in the wilderness, unexpected, life-giving, available even in the barren places. It requires a shift in focus from what is absent to what is present, namely, the presence of God and the small blessings He continuously provides. One of the most powerful ways to unlock this present joy is through cultivating gratitude. 1 Thessalonians 5:18. Choosing thankfulness for the small things cracks open the door for God's light to flood into your waiting space. Reflect, right now, in the quiet space of your heart, what is one small, genuine thing you can be thankful for in your life today, even in the midst of your waiting? Perhaps it's the warmth of the sun, a kind word received, the strength to get out of bed, the simple fact of breath in your lungs. Finding that one small thing is not ignoring your pain. It is choosing to see God's hand even there, planting a seed of present joy in the soil of your current reality. The stillness feels deafening. You've cried out, poured out your heart like water, waded through seasons that stretched into years. Where is the grand entrance? Where is the dramatic shift, the visible breakthrough you were so sure would arrive? It feels like God is silent, absent from the very place you need Him most. Doubt begins to creep in, cold fingers wrapping around your hope. Have your prayers been lost in the echo of the universe? Is He even listening anymore? But sometimes, when the waiting is longest and the silence feels deepest, God doesn't arrive in a storm or an earthquake. He doesn't announce Himself with trumpets or fire. Just like Elijah on Mount Horeb, fleeing from despair, expecting God in the dramatic, he found Him elsewhere. A fierce wind tore the mountains apart, a quake shook the ground, fire blazed, but God was not in any of them. Then came the sound, the low whisper. 1 Kings 19:11-12. A voice so quiet, it demanded stillness to hear. Perhaps you've missed the breakthrough because you're looking for the thunder when God is speaking in the whisper. The whisper might be a sudden, inexplicable sense of peace that settles over your anxiety in a moment of crisis. It could be that unexpected call from a friend who shares a word of encouragement that feels specifically crafted for your situation. It might be a verse in your morning reading that jumps off the page, a direct message addressing the very question you held in your heart. It's the small door that opens, offering a glimpse of light, even while the massive gate you expected remains stubbornly closed. It's a creative idea stirring in your spirit, a gentle nudge towards a path you hadn't considered. These aren't necessarily the full deliverance, the dramatic answer you've begged for. They are divine breadcrumbs, carefully placed along the path ahead. They are subtle confirmations that you are seen, you are heard, and you are absolutely not forgotten. They are God saying, "I am here, I am still moving, keep going." In the waiting, you learn to value the small things, for in the kingdom of God, the mustard seed holds the potential of the mightiest tree. What looks like delay from your perspective might be divine redirection, a resculpting in the quiet. You wait for the mountain to move, but God gives you strength for the climb. This insight requires more than just passive waiting. It demands an active, listening heart and watchful eyes. God is actively communicating and working. Even when the major answer hasn't visibly arrived, the wilderness is not always empty. Sometimes it's filled with soft murmurs of grace, small confirmations of presence, moments of unexpected peace that sustain the soul. Pay attention to these low whispers. They are not illusions. They are tangible evidence of His continued presence and diligent work behind the scenes. Ask God right now to open your eyes and ears, to attune your spirit to the small ways He is showing up for you today. What felt like a random thought? What was that unexpected feeling of comfort? What kindness crossed your path? Journal any whispers you perceive. His sheep hear His voice. John 10:27. Even in the longest night, look for the tiny pinpricks of starlight. They might just be the light of dawn breaking in ways you didn't expect. The dust of the waiting road settles around you. It clings to your clothes, whispers of the miles you've walked through the valley of unseen progress, of prayers that seem to echo back unanswered. You remember wrestling with the persistent shadow of doubt, watching others' journeys unfold while yours felt stalled, comparing your silent room to their breakthroughs. The ache of unseen progress was a constant companion, and perhaps the bitter pill of surrender was swallowed. Not surrender to defeat, but surrender to the lack of control, the lack of understanding. You thought waiting was a pause, an empty space. But you learned, didn't you? You learned that waiting is not a passive state, but an active posture of trust. It is a space where God does profound, often hidden, work in your soul. He wasn't just delaying an outcome. He was preparing you, refining you, drawing you closer to Himself in ways you couldn't have imagined. In the urgency of your plea, the answer may not have arrived in the way you expected. The door didn't open when you knocked. The path didn't clear when you asked. Or perhaps the answer hasn't arrived externally at all. Yet, look closely. Something fundamental has shifted within you. A quiet strength has bloomed in the barren places. You've discovered a resilience you didn't know you had, forged in the fire of uncertainty. A deeper dependence on God has taken root, like a mustard seed of faith growing in unexpected soil. You've begun to grasp, authentically, what it means to truly trust Him when all seems uncertain, when the visible evidence contradicts the whispered promise. This internal transformation, this is the unseen progress that matters most, the refining work of a master sculptor. The ultimate promise wasn't just the fulfillment of specific prayers, though His faithfulness is sure. No, the deeper, unwavering promise is the presence and faithfulness of God Himself. He is Emmanuel, God with us, not just present in the mountaintop moments, not just showing up for the breakthrough, but intimately, powerfully, and tenderly in the waiting. He holds you. Imagine it. He holds you in His hands. These aren't distant hands, but the hands that scooped dust to create life in its breathtaking complexity. The hands that parted seas for an impossible escape. The hands that were pierced for your freedom on a cross. The hands that uphold the entire universe with effortless grace. These hands, simultaneously vast and gentle, are holding your life story, every chapter, including the waiting. The silent room isn't empty. It is filled with His presence, a presence you've learned to discern in the stillness. The delay you experienced isn't denial. It is orchestrated by infinite wisdom, a divine timing that sees far beyond your limited horizon. Your identity is not tied to your circumstances or the outcome of your prayers. It is secure in Him. Your worth is immeasurable, not because of what you achieve or possess, but because you are His beloved child. Your journey, with all its twists and turns, its valleys and plateaus, is purposeful because it is being written and guided by a God who never abandons His children, who weaves all things together for the good of those who love Him. Rest in that truth. Lean back into the safety of those unseen hands. Even in the silence, His presence sings over you, a lullaby of trust that quiets your fears, a symphony of sovereign love that reassures your soul, assuring you He is here, He is good, and He is working, always. They didn't see the end, but they trusted the author, and that was enough.